fire, fury.
What's going on, guys? We have another incredible guest today for today's show. As you know, I'm Josh York. Welcome to Fuel Your Drive. And this individual, pro snowboarder, real estate investor, loves Warren Buffett, has a great head of hair, money expert. And honestly, I'm really excited to really get to dive deep with him, because not only are you going to learn, but I'm going to learn some things. And I was actually on his podcast a while back, and we reconnected again. And my man, Chris Naugle. Chris, welcome to the show, baby.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me on. Pumped to be here.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. So, I've been meaning to reach out to you for a while, because I know, we connected, I don't know, it was about probably maybe 2 years ago or a year and a half ago, something like that?
Probably a year and a half ago, I remember. It was still a little wonky going out there, but now it's a little bit more normal, if you can call it that.
Yeah. Well, look, I'm a big believer in, you gotta create your own path and create your own road, regardless of the distractions of what's going on there. But listen, man, I know they call you the money expert, and you talk a lot about making yourself your own bank, and I thought it'd be fantastic to bring you on and share some great information and a little bit about yourself. So I guess let's start off a little bit about your background and a little bit about what you do and who you are. I touched on some things, but let's start off with that.
Yeah, I mean, I just grew up as a normal kid in a lower middle class family. My dad was an alcoholic, so my mom primarily raised me, and she raised me on dreams. She didn't have much else. I mean, we weren't the kind of family that could just go out to eat anytime. We couldn't just do the things other families did. So I just had to draw it on paper and dream it. And that was my upbringing. It was great. I wouldn't change that for a bit. I'll never forget, as I got older, I was working a lot of jobs on farms around the house, and got a big boy job at 16, was treated so poorly that I became clinically depressed. And I remember the day that I quit that job. It was at a restaurant. And that literally was the day when I quit proverbially trading hours for dollars. And I came home, to mom, and I thought she'd be so upset with me. So a smart kid would come up with a plan B, and I did. And I told my mom I wanted to open a clothing line in the basement. I was going to sell it out of my backpack in school, and I was going to print shirts with my art teacher, Mr. Mahalski. And that was literally the moment when my first business started. It was called Fat Clothing Company, PHAT. I was a snowboard kid, so that meant cool back then. And here in upstate New York, that was it was a really neat thing. Nobody had really done anything like that. And that's when I became an entrepreneur. It was wild. It was different than, Josh, I look at people today. I look at young kids that start businesses, and their motive and their drive to do that was very different than mine. I mean, today they want to become multimillionaires and billionaires. Back then, man, I needed a job. So I created a business because I didn't want to work for someone. I just needed gas money to get to the hill to snowboard. And I needed a skateboard deck here and there. That was it. Those were my ambitions starting Fat Clothing. And boy, it was so fun, man. Those early days, printing shirts with Mr. Mahalski, selling them out of my backpack. And I built a sales team. Now, let me tell you how I did this. This is kind of neat. My friends would come to me and be like, oh, I want one of those shirts. And I'm like, I'll give you a shirt, but you got to sell 4. You sell 4, you get 1 for free. And this is how I built my sales team. So I literally should have coined this, the backpack sales team back then, because we just sold shirts out of our bags. That transitioned 16 to 17. I had 3 seamstresses, local women that, just took on seamstress work for me to make shirts and jackets and stuff out of their homes. And I'd buy bolts of discount fabric, and they would just sew it all together. It was cool. But I got this one opportunity. I went and sold my clothing to this shop, this skateboard shop called Hardpack. The owner was this Tim guy. And I remember being in his shop. He bought my clothes and he said, hey, do you want to go snowboard? Now, like you said, I was a snowboarder and I became a pro snowboarder. So I said, sure. And I'm looking around. Tim's the only guy in the shop. And I remember saying to him, well, when do you want to go? Because in the back of my mind, I'm like, I want to get back on the road and get home. And he's like, well, let's go right now. This was like a weird moment, because I'm like, how can you go right now? The shop is open till 8:00 at night. How are you just going to leave? And he just walks out and shuts the door. And I'm like, whoa, I got to have this. So that began the next phase of my dream to open my first shop. And that would have been 92. Actually, this would be 93 at this point. I got this idea. I wanted to open a snowboard shop called Fat Man Board Shops. And I needed 70 grand. So everybody, and I'm sure many of your listeners can relate, when you go around at 17 or 18 or however old, you were when you were younger, and you ask people for money for your dream, everybody tells you you can't. You should never do that. That's a stupid idea. It's like that movie, Kid, you'll shoot your eye out. And I remember my dream almost died. My mom saw this and she came to me and she said, you know, what has to happen for this to really work? And I said, well, Ma, there was this bank. They said that they needed collateral. I told them I had a dirt bike and a old Buick and some baseball cards. And they said, no, kid, we need real collateral like a house. And we'll give you this SBA backed loan. And my mom said, well, Chris, we've got this house. She said it in that term. I don't know if anyone picked up. We, not my mom, we have this house. And it was the house she got in the divorce. So she put her house on the line so that I could chase that dream. And it was November of 1994. I opened that shop in the Lockport Mall, and the rest was just craziness. It was just hustling, man. Hustling to keep the business open, make sure mom's house didn't get taken by the bank. And it was a wild ride. I became a pro snowboarder and everything was like a fairy tale until the early 2000s when the brakes got hit hard in the .com crash. And I'll remember that. So I think of the .com crash when the planes hit the tower, because that was what I remembered. Next thing I knew after that moment, my store started plummeting. I needed to get a job. Little Caesars wasn't hiring. And I put my resume out, which fit on one page for the record. And the only places that called me back were Wall Street firms. I still to today can't really articulate how that happened, but I was a punk skateboard kid, and Wall Street wanted me to come work for them. And I did. And that's how I entered the money game. And it was a weird change because, you know, I went from wearing beanies and hoodies every day to now I'm wearing black, gray, or navy blue suits. And I was pond scum. That's all I was. Dialing for dollars for the guys on the outside, but I was an astute child or kid at that time, young man, whatever you want to call me. I watched these guys get there at like 9 o'clock, leave for 2 hours on lunch. And then at the end of the day, they were gone by 4:35. So all I did is I did what they were unwilling to do. Showed up at 7, worked through lunch, pounding the phones. And after they left, I went out and I saw people at their kitchen table. And as you know, because you create your own destiny, just as I did, I became one of the top advisors in that firm, making hundreds of thousands. And I made a lot of money. I still had my shops. I was still living my dream as a pro snowboarder, but things were changing because I had to decide what I was going to do. And that got me into the mid 2000s, crushing it. And then 2008, I bought a strip mall, not a strip mall. It was a dilapidated paint store, but with the vision of turning it into a 3-unit strip mall. And then the Great Recession hit me. And just like that, like getting hit by a Mack truck out in the road, everything halted. I almost went bankrupt. And my girlfriend, my prized girlfriend who just moved into my house, I went to her and I said, sweetie, I need you to help me pay the mortgage, the utilities. And I'm going to move my buddy Pete into that bedroom and my friend Jessa and upstairs. Any questions? I didn't say that, but it felt like, it just feels right. Like, any questions? And that's how I made it through 2008's Great Recession, by the skin on my teeth. That's it. Then after that, I started buying real estate because that's what, remember you mentioned Warren Buffett. So I was an avid studier of every single piece of material that was out there on Warren Buffett. And Warren Buffett puts everything so simple. And I'd never forget, like, all I could think about is his master recipe for success as an investor: buy low, sell high, don't lose money. Yep. 2009, which is this era that I'm in now, real estate was at the bottom. And I'm like, that's low. I started buying it, Josh. I just started buying real estate, pennies on the dollar. And I did that until 2014, and then lost all of it again, and then had to pick myself up. And gosh, the next phase was the show on HGTV. So me and my wife were flipping a lot of houses. We went from rentals to flips because it just seemed quicker, more agile. It actually was a nightmare. But we got a show on HGTV called Risky Builders in 2018. And I left Wall Street in 18 because of the show, sold my practice. And that enabled me to go out there now and teach what I do, which is how to take back control of your money and how to be your own bank. Because everything I learned in Wall Street, I learned was a dead end for my clients, just to give me their money to control and make money on it. And today I teach people the opposite of everything I learned and the secrets of what wealthy do.
Yeah. Listen, well, first off, I love your story so much because people think, like when they say like you make it, like you never really make it until you really get to that final destination. And I really wouldn't call it a final destination, because failure is just a consistent thing that's going to continue to happen. And it's just, and if you listen to, Chris's story, it's happened how many times, right? But you just keep moving. You keep moving. And like, even like, again, this is about you, but if I like come to me for a second, like, we're the largest in-home on-site personal training company in the world, and I'm still having failures left and right all the time, all the time. Like the saying, "You never give up," is really what it comes down to. You just keep moving your feet, and you never give up. And obviously, Chris, you are a great example of that. But I have really, really been drawn to the whole thing about whole life, and how banks purchase whole life, and how people don't understand what that really looks like, and how you really can become your own bank. Because personally, I want to really learn more about this too, because I want to jump all over it, but I think my viewers are going to really, really love it. So I'd love to like dive into that and kind of explain what you do about being your own bank, because it's really quite interesting. Because I was talking to a friend of mine about this, and he's like, a lot of people don't know about that. But he was explaining it, and I was like, well, you know what? Don't tell me too much. So I got my man Chris coming on my podcast next week. This was last week. I want to hear it from him, because I don't want to be too educated on it yet. I'd rather you educate me. So let's get into it, man.
All right. So the first thing to identify here about being your own bank is I didn't create this. This has been around for hundreds of years.
Yep.
We're going to go into here is, this has been used by all the wealthiest families throughout history. I mean, you could trace its origins back, and I got an awesome video on my YouTube channel, The History of IBC. And it goes back to the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers, the JP Morgans and the Stanleys. So the bankers and the wealthy families. And how it all happened is back then they didn't really trust banks. Even though they were bankers, they didn't trust banks because banks showed weaknesses. So these guys were so wealthy, they needed to find a place to warehouse their wealth. And when they looked, the place they kept landing as the safest financial institution where their money should sit is giant mutually owned insurance companies. The same is true back hundreds of years ago, right up till today. And it's so cool that we get to do this right now in a time when we're in a recession, getting deeper into it, when banks are failing. Every day I turn the news on, there's another freaking bank failing. And here's me, this guy who's never really like gotten traction on this, because people are like, oh, banks are safe. Oh, Wall Street's safe. Now Wall Street's falling apart. Banks are falling apart. And here I am teaching you what the wealthy people saw that long ago. So yeah, they found, banks to be unsafe. So they found insurance companies. And the problem was when they went to the insurance companies and said, hey, we're looking for a place to take our hard-earned money and deposit it. The insurance company wanted nothing to do with it. They're like, we're not a bank. Go to your bank. And they said, no. We want to put our money here. And the only way they found to do it is through a product that was around then and still around today. It's the only one that stood the test of time, called whole life insurance. Now, let me pause there. Because as soon as I say that, now I know you and I know what this is, but your audience is thinking of whole life in a very like little square box. They think it's all the same. They think whole life is what Dave Ramsey and Susie Orman always says is the worst place you could put your money. And I would agree with them if you're talking about regular whole life. But when I then tell you that whole life, the number one purchaser of whole life in the world is traditional banks, I'd have to ask you, do you think banks are buying the same whole life that your broke ass brother-in-law tried selling you last week? No freaking way. And if you go back to the origins of these wealthy families, even Walt Disney and Ray Kroc, Doris Christopher, JFK, Biden, McCain, any of these families, they all use this. They're not using the same whole life that you buy. They're actually constructing it and building it from contractual level to be almost backwards in the way it's designed. Lowest death benefit, highest amount of deposits going in, which creates a machine that almost looks like a savings account, but has way more advantages, which we'll get into a second. So now that we understand that we're not talking about a regular whole life, we can proceed. There's two components of being your own bank. Number one, there's the machine, the product, okay, which I've spent very little time talking about. So let's get it out of the way. It's that specially designed and engineered whole life insurance policy. Now, why in the world would we use whole life? And why would all these families use whole life when there's these things that you hear about all the time from your broker? There's IULs. Those are way better. Not even close. And those things haven't even stood the test of time through one recession, let alone all the recessions and depressions since, these families are around. There's only one vehicle that can do what a whole life does, and that is a whole life. First off, it provides you a contractual guaranteed interest rate. They will never change for as long as you live, and it will never fluctuate. You might be getting 3-4% in your bank account if you're lucky, but it won't be that way next year, the year after. It'll float. It'll be all over. Whole life provides a level guaranteed death benefit and also a level guaranteed cost. So there's a cost for the death benefit. Even though we're going to put the lowest death benefit on by IRS rules, it's level. It never changes the rest of your life. So now we've got a really cool mechanism to start with, something that pays a fixed interest rate and has a fixed cost. So now we got predictability and stability of it. Secondarily, every year, these are mutually owned insurance companies, and never once have they ever missed it, but they pay a dividend. Every year they give a dividend to their policyholders, because that's how they reward their policyholders, just like a stock company would reward shareholders, but you're a policyholder. So you are just like a shareholder in a mutually owned company. So you get a dividend. So when you combine the interest rate with the dividend, that puts you around anywhere between 5 and 6%, depending on the company we use. So we're already better than banks, and we're more consistent. But now comes the good thing and why the wealthy love it. Number one, all the growth inside of the policy is tax-free. So to earn what you can earn in a whole life tax-free outside in the non-tax-free world, you'd have to, depending on your tax rate, probably make 7, maybe even 7.5% to get the same return as you can get guaranteed here. Secondarily, this is the real kicker. Okay. And this is where we're going to spend the time on the machine. If I take my money, my savings, you're never going to put all your money into a specially designed whole life for this purpose. You wouldn't be able to, but you're going to take and you're going to change one thing. And that one thing, folks, is just where your money goes first. So I want you to envision that, right? All we're changing for all of you, this is how simple it is just where you put your money first. Your money's never going to just sit here. It's just going to go and run through this specially designed whole life. So you're just changing the direction of where your money goes first. And once your money goes into the whole life, there's 2 promises. I told you, a guaranteed interest rate and a death benefit will be paid out if you die. But now the goal is to figure out where that money goes next to make money a second time. Because if I put money in the specially designed whole life, and let's just play this. How much would it cost to open a franchise with you?
One franchise, $44,500 is a franchise fee.
So let's just envision one of your franchisees or somebody that's looking at your business and says, I really want to do this. They need 40, let's just round it up to 45 for simple math. They need 45 grand, right?
Yep.
So to get 45 grand, they had to save that money somewhere, a brokerage account or a savings account, of which, once they take that 45 grand out of the savings account and give it to you, that money stops earning interest, right?
Yep.
I mean, everybody knows that to be true.
Correct.
But let's just say we changed where that 45 grand went first, and we put it into one of these specially designed and engineered whole life policies. Then 30 days after we put it in there, we then take a loan from the whole life or the 45 grand, and we give it to your company to buy the franchise. Now, first off, what we started with, let's just say we started with 50 grand in the whole life and we took 45 out. How much money's left in the whole life policy?
Five grand.
Yeah, five. You're right. I know
Yeah.
you've already heard this, so you're kind of questioning. You're like, I know the answer, but this is what logically makes sense. You started with 50. I took 45 out to buy the franchise, so I got 5 grand left. That's how your bank account would be. But you see, I said it, and I'm going to repeat it and explain it. We put 50 in, but we took 45 out as a loan. So whose money was that loan? Well, it wasn't yours. Your 50 grand is still in the account earning interest and dividends, but you just used 45 grand of someone's money. Whose money was it? Well, rightfully, it was technically yours, but you had to die to get it first. You were able to go in and borrow against your death benefit while you're living, to the extent of the amount of money you had in cash value, because that's the collateral. So the insurance company would give you up to 50 grand. If you had 50 grand in cash value, they'll give you up to 50 grand of your death benefit while you're living. So the money I took out wasn't my money that's earning. The money I took out was the money that someday would be paid when I die, and I took it as a loan. Now, when you hear a loan, there's a couple of things people always think about. Bad. Loan, bad, because they got to pay interest on it, which indeed the insurance company charges you interest. But here's the cool thing that you'd have to learn, and I'm not going to get too deep into this, but if you're earning, let's just use one of the insurance companies that pays 5.5, right? And you're paying 5% in interest. You're making a spread of 0.5%, so 0.5%. So you're making 5.5 and you're paying 5. So you're making 0.5% right out of the hole. Now that would be a spread. Now, if you think about a traditional bank, how does a traditional bank make money? Well, you give up control of your money, you give it to the bank. The bank then takes your money that you gave them and they are in control of it to then make that money go work for them, and they loan it out. So if they pay you 4 and they lend money out at 6, they make a spread, right? You just were able to do the identical thing as a traditional bank because you put your money in an account and you were earning more than what you were paying to take it out. But see, that's the part where people mistake. So even though we're still earning on the full amount and we had the amount to go buy the franchise, which the franchise is going to make us money. So really, if you think about it, we just found a way by changing one thing to make money twice because we're making a spread first. And then we're making money on the investment or the business opportunity, which in this case is a franchise, which is going to pay you income, salary, all sorts of stuff, profit splits, whatever your franchise ends up doing. But here's the other cool thing. If you got 50 grand in this scenario earning interest, next year, that 50 grand isn't 50, it's 50 plus the interest and dividends. So you're compounding on a higher amount. So if you understand compound interest, every year you're making more and more, and it goes faster and faster. So although your spread the first year might be hypothetically 0.5% for this example, and this is just an example, your experience might be different, might be more, might be less. Next year, your spread goes up. And the year after, it goes up and up and up. And every year for the rest of your life, the amount that you put in, you'll be able to take out more than what you put in. Why? Because compound interest is just mathematics. And Albert Einstein described it very good. He said it was the 8th wonder of the world. He said, those that understand it, earn it. I'm telling you how to earn it. Those that don't, pay it. Most of you listening that use bank loans, you're paying it. Like, nothing wrong with it. It's just what you've been taught. You've been taught how money works the wrong way. And I'm teaching you how the money works the right way and how the wealthy do it. So now let's just play that one out real quick. We changed where our savings went. We had somewhere for that money to go. We put 50 in. We took 45 out, which was a loan against the death benefit. So we still have 50 in earning interest, and we're making a small spread. Now the money's making money over here in the franchise. So what are you going to do with the profits, the salary and everything you make over in the franchise? Well, some of that money has to go somewhere. And most people are like, oh, I'm going to put it in the bank. No, you're not. You created your own banking system now. So why would you ever take the profits and everything else and put it in someone else's bank when you now have a bank that is working with the same rules that a regular bank would? So now what I'm going to do is whatever profits we're going to have, let's just use this money I'm holding. I'm going to basically move it around the bottom part of the circle, and I want to put it back into the policy as a loan repayment. Now, remember I said we took a loan. We're making money twice. Part of it is our investment paying us, and we take the investment returns and we put that money back into our bank, i.e. as a loan repayment to the whole life. Okay. When we repay the loan, every dollar of the money you repaid is back in your control and can be used the next day. Unlike when you take a loan from the bank to buy, a car, and you make a car payment, you can't just go to that bank and say, hey, I made a car payment, but I need that money back. Can I have it? The bank would laugh at you. But when you make a car payment back to your bank in this scenario, you have access to that money because you are in control of the money. And all we did is, in that example, think of a circle, folks. Just in your mind, I'm just drawing it on the screen. I created a circle, and we can all envision that. And all we did is to create this banking system. On the left side of the circle, we changed where our savings went first. In this example, we put 50 grand over there, and we'll get into the numbers in a second. Then we had an opportunity over on the right side of the circle. And the opportunity in this case was a franchise, but this opportunity could have been buying a car. It could have been paying off debt. It could have been lending money out. It could have been any investment opportunity each of you listening would do. We took the money from our bank, the whole life, and we moved it over the top part of the circle to the opportunity. We bought the opportunity or invested in the opportunity. The opportunity returned something, okay? And that return could have been either a monthly payment, interest, dividends, profits, whatever it is. And all we did is we just took the return and we moved it around the bottom part of the circle, and we put it back in the same stinking place it came out of, which we're going to call your bank. The whole time this goes on, you always make money. Now, there are some negatives. So let's just get the negatives out of the way. You're buying a product from an insurance company that is not a nonprofit. No insurance companies are nonprofit, just like there's not a bank out there that's a nonprofit either. So when you buy this whole life, there are costs, and the costs are from the death benefit, which when we design it backwards. We're going to put the lowest death benefit possible so that the costs are the lowest way. And Dave Ramsey should thank us sometimes because we use term insurance inside the policy a lot to support the death benefit because we need to follow the rules that the IRS sets. In order for this thing to be tax-free, we got to follow what's called the MEC 7 pay rule. Now, everybody listening, if we were to design your policy, you don't have to worry about the MEC rule because we know how to build them. But if you go to your broke-ass brother-in-law to design one of these, you better be really careful. They won't know how to build it, and it could become taxable. But based on the amount you want to save, I used 50 grand, but let's just say you had $500 a month that you wanted to save. The number is whatever you choose it to be. There's a minimum, and it's just add a 0 behind your age. I'm 45, so 450 a month would be my minimum. The maximum, well, whatever you can qualify for. I work with real estate developers that put millions of dollars away per year. So go anywhere from a 0 after your age to millions of dollars, and that's how much money you can save in this system that I'm telling you about. So when we do it, there's a cost for the death benefit. So the cost for the death benefit, even though you're making interest and dividends, usually results in you not having access to 100% of your money in the first year. If you put 50 grand in, you might only have access to 45, like I told. It might only be 40, depending on how you decide you want it built. But the other cool part is the negative part is for the next couple years, you might not have every dollar you put into the policy. Now, for some people, this is a knockout. They can't deal with this. Wait, so next year, if I put 50 in the first year, next year I put 10 grand in, you mean to tell me I'm not going to have all 10 to use? Nope. You're probably going to have 9,500 or 9,000 the second year. In the third year, you put another 10 in and you might only have 9,800. Now, most of the policies we design after the third year, or sometimes in the third year, you will hit what's called an efficiency point. Now, listen carefully, because I intentionally told all of you the negatives. And some of you are like, well, that sucks. I don't want that. Hang on. You're playing the short game. Life is a marathon, just like building wealth is a marathon. It's not a sprint. Any of you that want to get rich quick, this is not for you. Period. Don't call us. Don't do this if you want to get rich quick, because it won't work. This is a longer strategy and one that will always work 100% of the time. The third year is the efficiency point. Now, hear me out. Let's just say the third year, I put 10 grand in. And then 30 days later, after my check clears, I find an opportunity. I want to take that money out as a loan. How much can I take out? Well, in most of the designs we build, you can take out more than 10 grand. So let's just call it 10,500 we take out. So now we take 10,500 out. So we had a tailwind of 500, which is the compound interest. So the next year I put 10 grand in, and now I might be able to take 11,500 out. The next year I put 10 grand in, I might be able to take 12,000 out. And the number every year goes up. And it's not magic. It's not hocus pocus. It's not market driven. It's mathematics. Compound interest. No matter what you do, no matter what happens in the world, in the economy, if we're in a war, if we're in a recession, if we're in a depression, your money every year will be worth more than it was the year before, because there's fixed interest and fixed cost. This is why the wealthy use this. But again, the wealthy are building wealth, which means they're playing the long game, not the short game. Sorry, Josh, if I went too deep in that, but we can unravel any piece of that you want.
Dude, that's incredible. Well, so how does someone go about doing this?
Oh, I mean, they just how I learned is a guy, my mentor, Brent, his name is, made me watch a 90-minute video. So I've carried that tradition on. If you want to do this, you'd go to my website, chrisnaugle.com. You'd watch a 90-minute video. And after you watch the video, if you still like it, which I know you will, because the video teaches you how to get all the money back for every single car you will ever buy, drive, and own by just doing what I told you. And it also shows you how to pay off debt. Like we do a case study with a chiropractor that paid off $478,000 in 6.5 years without working harder, longer, or taking on any risk. All he did is change where his money went first. And then after that, you just book a call with us, and we will then find out what your needs and goals are, talk through the process. And at the end of the call, you will probably ask us to help you get started, in which we will. And that's how you get started.
And what kind of fee is involved with that? So people who are interested.
None. We don't charge a fee. So we get paid direct by the insurance company. So this is another thing, because whole life, if you talk to anyone out there, they usually say whole life pays a huge commission to the agents. You guys must be making a fortune. Now, if I sold you a regular whole life, I probably would be. But remember, I said they're specially designed and engineered to have the lowest death benefit possible. How commissions are paid is by the death benefit. So if I put the lowest death benefit, I'm reducing my compensation, my commission. And every policy we build reduces our payout by 60 to 90%, but it's still a payout. So we're getting paid by the insurance company so that our clients don't have to pay us. There's a lot of guys out there that charge a fee for building these policies. We just don't. We're the largest in the country. We have almost 8,000 clients in the US alone. Canada, a couple hundred probably. But because of that, we work on a philosophy as if we solve somebody else's problem, our problem will be solved. It's sheerly a scale game. We help a lot of people solve problems.
And is this through like a guardian? Is this through like is it through a large company, like, and just people just don't know about it? Like, because I'm
Yes.
just mind blown by this, because I'm thinking like 700 different things right now in my mind of where my money's going. And I'm like, this actually probably is like, makes more sense that I should be putting my money in here rather than where I'm putting my money right now.
Well, at least start with your money going here. Because remember, this is not, put the money in the whole life or put the money in an investment. This is the and or asset, as my buddy Caleb's book states. His book's called The And or Asset. You put your money here and you invest over there. Like, it's the same dollar working for you twice. So you don't have to make a decision. Oh gosh, I want to put my money in the markets, but I also want to do this, and then put your money in the market, which I'd be very careful with the stock market right now. So you mentioned Guardian, which is very unique because being that we're both from New York, Guardian and Security Mutual are really the only two mutuals that we can use to do this. Mass Mutual but Mass Mutual doesn't want this kind of business anymore. So yes, for me and you, Guardian would be the choice because they are a mutually owned giant insurance company that pays dividends. But in other parts of the country, we use other companies like Lafayette and One America, to name just a few. But in the whole world of life insurance, there's really only about 10 companies, period, that we can use. And out of the 10, we then got to really narrow it down. And it works out to be about 5 or 6 that actually do what we need them to do to create these. So it's not like it's huge. Now, how come you've never heard about this? And how come your audience is hearing this being like, this sounds too good to be true? Well, it's not too good to be true. It's been around forever. You can look it up, watch the video, the history. It's just facts. Is because I want you to think of this. Why would you have not heard of this? Why wouldn't your advisor, your agent, and all your friends been talking about this? First off, whole life's got a terrible reputation because all people know about is the regular whole life that does pay a high commission. So if somebody puts 10 grand into a regular whole life, that commission is going to be 5,500 to 7,000. If somebody puts money in an IUL, the commission is probably 12 grand for every 10 grand that somebody puts in. So why is that the insurance companies and the agents want to sell IULs? High commissions. That's why. And why are whole lives not sold the way that I just described? Well, go ask your advisor this. Say, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Advisor, I want you to design me a specially designed and engineered whole life. They won't understand what you mean. But in doing so, I was told that it requires you to take a cut in your commission by 90%. Are you willing to help me? Your agent or advisor will tell you first, that's not possible. They'll tell you that that's illegal. They'll tell you that that can't be done. And right then and there, you know that they have no freaking clue how this works. But if you climb the ranks in any insurance company and you go to a division called the BOLI division, bank-owned life insurance, which is what it stands for, and you ask anybody on that floor of the skyscraper the insurance company owns, not rents, you will ask them and they'll say, oh yeah, I know exactly how to do that. Here's what you do. You reduce the death benefit down to the bare minimum. We add some term to hit the MEC limits. We put the majority of your money. How much percentage do you want? Okay, 80% into the paid up additions rider. That money becomes available to you immediately, starts earning interest. Then when they would literally talk to you like that, which I know, don't try to articulate what I just said because your head's going to spin, but they would know. But if you come back down to the first floor, which is the retail floor where they just sell regular life insurance, term insurance, regular whole life, and some other products, ULs and things like that, those folks won't have the slightest clue what you're talking about because they've never been shown it. They've never been taught it. And I'll prove it. For 16 years of my life, starting in 2003, ending in the late, 2018, but it was almost 19 when I retired from Wall Street. Not one time was I ever shown, told, or taught how to do this. I knew what BOLI was. I even knew what COLI was, company-owned life insurance, which are both designing policies the way that I just explained. But no one ever told me about it because it's not profitable for the agents, the advisors, and not profitable for the general agencies because they all have to take a reduction in their commission. And in the normal financial advisors model, they're not working with thousands of people. They're working with hundreds, if they're lucky. If they're a top producer, they have 100, maybe 200 clients. That's like a top producer. So that's why They can't survive by taking a cut of 60 to 90% in their compensation. For us to do what we do, we've literally had to reinvent the whole model and build it on scale and build it on volume, because otherwise we would not even be able to afford a staff. But when you start adding thousands of clients, it doesn't become a model where you need big commissions. It becomes a model where you start getting really good at picking up nickels and pennies. And by picking up nickels and pennies every day on thousands of people, you make a lot of money. And it just goes back to Zig Ziglar. The secret to making money or success or wealth is if you help enough people get what they want, you'll get what you want. That's all we do.
Very true, man. Well, listen, I want to talk about that right away. So as soon as we get off this call, we got to set up another call because I'm definitely very interested in that.
Happy to help.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate that. Man, it's crazy. It's like, as you're saying this, I'm just thinking of like a teacher I had in college that literally failed me. I never actually failed the class in school except for this one class. I actually failed it twice. This professor had something against me, just did not like me. And I'll never forget when he said to me, and I would always think, like, how much money does this guy have in his bank account? But you're taught to go to school and you're gonna, get a 9-to-5 job and you're gonna become super successful if you work hard. And the truth of that is it's really BS, right? And I always talk about, you have the entrepreneur, you have the intrapreneur, and people think, you have to always be an entrepreneur, and that's not necessarily true, because sometimes you can come into a company as an intrapreneur, be number 3, 4, 5, or even number 10, and make as or more money than number 1, and deal with less stress, less pressure. But you're actually, showing your skill set and, providing value, showing that, you belong in that company. But I remember back when, this guy would tell me, you're never going to be successful. Like, this is what this guy was telling me. I'll never forget. He's like, you're just going to be a dumb jock, continue playing your hockey. You're never going to be successful. And it is almost like what you're kind of sharing right now, right? Like they don't want you to know these type of things. Like, that's what's so mind blowing. It's like they want you to fail. It's like they want you to be unhealthy. Like, I saw something recently, which was mind blowing to me. The government put out this like nutritional pyramid. I don't know if you saw this, and they were saying that pretty much, I forgot what cereal. Yeah,
it was sick. It made me sick to see
Fruity
that.
Pebbles, or I forgot what cereal was healthier than ground beef or something crazy like that.
It was. No, you're right. It was healthier than ground beef. They put it on the scale. It was like, oh, eat Lucky Charms, and it's way better than eating a wholesome steak.
Like, it's crazy. That's why it's so smart to be surrounding yourself with the right people. And you always got to put money in that relationship bank account, right? Because you have the bank account, you have your whole life policy we were just talking about, and then you have the relationship account. And that relationship account is very important because they always say, you surround yourself with 5 winners, you're going to be the 6th one. Surround yourself with 5 losers, you're going to be the 6th loser. So that's just really mind blowing to me when you're saying all these things, because it's like, why would they teach that in school?
They won't, and they never ever have in history, because the whole game, the banking, like you could start with the Fed, which would be the top of the pyramid. Then you come down to government, you come down to banking, which is the Fed, to central banks. And then you look at all the education that's derived from that. All the education is federally funded in one way or the other, or state funded, which is basically the same as federal funded. And what do all of those equations want? They want control. Yep. They want control. True. Now, everything I just explained to your entire audience was about you taking back control of your money by teaching you how to become the bank. I literally taught you what the banks do, and I taught you how to take back control. So you don't really need the banks. And if you watch that video on my page, or any of the videos on my YouTube, it'll talk to you about a number of different ways to take back control. So why in the world would they ever want you to know this? Hey, someday if this gets big enough, I might be floating down the Hudson face down because of teaching this, but that's fine, because sometimes you got to stick your neck out there and do what's right and teach people what nobody else will. Because if you do what everybody else is unwilling to do, that's the secret. The consequences, well, they are what they are. And it's so simple to understand when you really start getting yourself out of the bullshit that we are living in, and you start really saying, why? Well, why is it that everybody says buy term insurance and invest the difference? I'll tell you why. What do you think the most profitable product an insurance company has? Term insurance. Well, why is that? That's the cheapest product. That's what you've been taught to believe. It's the most profitable because they've done the math. Their actuaries know that less than 2% of all term policies sold in the country, in the world for that matter, are paid out on. So if you all had a product that you only had to pay out on less than 2% of ever, you had to fulfill on less than 2% of everything you promised, what product would you sell? What product would you market? What product would you tell your sales team to sell? Term insurance. And in today's world, it's been modified. It's the same thing, but it's IULs. That's because it puts all the risk back on the client and not on the insurance company. Whole life is the product that they don't advertise. They don't want you to know about because it puts the risk back on the insurance company and takes it off the policyholder, and it puts you in control if used with this. Now, remember, we talked about a whole life, but don't glorify or make the whole life more than it is. It's just a tool. Yep. Money is just a tool, folks. It is nothing more than that. And if you make it anything more, you're really screwing up. Money's the tool. It's like the shovel in the driveway. When you master how to use the shovel, you can build beautiful things. When you master the tool called money, you can do and help and give beautiful things to people. But if you don't understand how the tool works, it'll always be, you'll just be a slave to the tool, really, to the system. And that's what you all have been taught. It's what I was taught, to be a slave to the system. And then we wonder why we feel like we're living on a hamster wheel, going round and round, working harder, longer, trading more hours for dollars, trying to do and hustle and do all this stuff, but nothing ever seems to make sense. Have you ever thought that maybe the problem is what we do from the start instead of how hard we work? I teach my daughter this. She's almost 3 years old. And I did a TEDx talk, which was a letter I wrote to her. And I don't mean to go off on a little tangent here, but it's so important because our legacy is not what we leave in the garage, not the house we leave or the money in the bank. Our legacy is what we pass on to our children and the younger generation, because unless we change it there, nothing will ever change. I teach my daughter that in life, you cannot focus on trading hours for dollars, even though that's what everybody's going to tell you you got to do. You got to go out and you got to work hard. You got to work longer. You got to do overtime. That's what I was taught. I told her the wealthy don't do that. The wealthy make their money work for them. Now, granted, in the beginning, they worked for that money, but they worked for it and they added some laws, 6 laws of wealth from the richest man in Babylon. First is pay yourself first. For every $10 I teach her, take and keep $1. And as that $1 that you keep starts to build up, then you send that money out to work for you. And when your money works for you, it produces an offspring. That offspring is not another child. That offspring is more money in the form of interest, dividends, and profits. You take the interest, dividends, and profits, and then you continue to make that money go to work for you. But you always stay focused on protecting your wealth. And protecting your wealth means you only invest in things you know, like, and understand. I tell her all this in this letter and in my TEDx talk, which is called Rethink Money, a letter to my daughter. And I teach her the difference between someone that's rich and somebody that's wealthy is the person that's wealthy has figured out how not to give their money back. The person that's rich is just putting on a facade. And when you peel the onion, you'll realize it's hollow. It's a house of cards in most cases. The Lambo, the fancy clothes, the fancy shoes, the handbags, most of the times, it's what Tyler Durden said in Fight Club. You know, we buy things we don't need to impress people we don't like. Like, why do we do that? And we work jobs we hate to fill it all up, and we trade hours for dollars. My daughter will never understand the way that people use money ever, but she will never stop giving. This is what I'm teaching my daughter because that's the legacy. If I can teach my daughter how to change this, she can teach someone in her life, her kids, her friends, and eventually it becomes a contagion and it spreads. But if we don't start teaching our children this and we just take it and we just try to use these tools, we use these concepts that I just taught you, which is called the infinite banking concept, and we just use them for self-gratification, we don't leave a legacy, because the cars, they rust out and they become worthless. The houses, they fall apart. The fake shit that we put so much value on means nothing until we can change the future. And the only way to do that is to start with the kids.
Dude, it's so powerful. And you know what's so crazy? I'm just thinking right now, like, how many people are actually going to listen to this and do something about it? Not many.
1%. If we're lucky, 10%. If you've got that audience that's ready to change.
You know, it's crazy. What I'm thinking about is like, so, you know, obviously I use social media. I'm a very private guy. I don't put my family out there. I just keep a business, and I don't need to do it. Like every morning when I get up, I do a stamp of the time I wake up. I wake up every day at, you know, it's like 3:37, 3:29 is when I wake up. But by the time I go down and I click the picture and I snap the time, is 3:37. And, you know, the reason I really started this was indirectly, I want to market my franchise partners, right? And I want them to show them how you have to be consistent. And all I'm doing is being a good leader, right? Because leaders lead by example, and good leaders always create other good leaders. Sometimes I'll post my food, but I'm just thinking in my head, like, why don't people copy me, what I'm doing? you know, and now I'm thinking like, you're giving such valuable information. Am I going to be the only one that's going to take action on this? Because I'm definitely doing this, right? Like,
no, because you're the leader. You just said it. You're the leader and people will follow you. Not many people might take action on what I just said because they're going to try to find a way to poke holes and go try. You won't poke holes because this has been used forever. So, but they'll find ways. They'll make excuses. They'll listen to somebody else. Like, yeah, this is something that blows my mind. You're a leader. I'm a leader. People follow leaders. The wolf, okay, if you look at wolves, the leader's always out in front doing the hard shit, carving the path through the deep snow. And until that lead wolf gets tired and goes to the back, the next leader comes and emerges out of second place and third. And you guys can follow that. That's how wolf packs survive. And they survive much better than we do. Okay. But it's because they understand leadership and tenacity. So if everybody really wanted the simplest way to success, I'll give it to them. It's been created. Earl Nightingale talks about it in The Strangest Secret in the World. And I'm going to remember I said 10%. That was a key number, but that's a dream. 5% is really the number. So in this story of Earl Nightingale talking about the difference between success and failure, it comes down to a study, because there's only one thing that will create success and everybody else will do another thing to create failure. And here's what it is. They took 125-year-olds, eager, optimistic, young 25-year-olds, and asked them a question. They asked them a single question. Are you going to be successful at the age of retirement? All of them say yes. Just like if we took 125-year-olds today, they'd all say yes. Matter of fact, they'd probably say it arrogantly and be like, I can't believe you'd even ask me this. I'm going to be a billionaire. Of course you are. Okay. So then they follow them through life. And by the time they hit retirement age, the truth comes out. Out of 100, how many of them do you think were successful? 5.
There you go.
5 were successful.
Not
now,
surprising.
as strange as this is, if we look at Social Security Administration and we look at the statistics, out of 100 people, 5 will be financially successful at the age of retirement. Only 1 will be wealthy. So the study that was done way long ago, well before Social Security was tracking this, matches Social Security today. So what's the difference between the 5 and the 95 that were unsuccessful? Creation. Who are creators? Leaders. Why are leaders creators? Why are leaders creators? Because they're willing to go out and do what everybody else is unwilling to do, the hard shit. They're willing to carve the path, get up at 3:27 in the morning, and do that, to lead by example. So the 5, all they did is created their destiny, created their financial future, created their dream. The other 95%, what did they do? Folks, look around at everybody you see out there. They conformed, folks. It's so simple to see what the failure model is. It's conformed to somebody else's failed reality. Conform to other people telling you shouldn't, you couldn't. Why would you do this? My closest friends, when I was trying to get money for that store, they all told me I couldn't, I shouldn't. That's a dumb dream. I did it because I created. The rest of them wanted me to conform to their failed ideologies, their failed reality, and their failed financial plan. But yet I wasn't willing to stoop down and fall to their level. I was going to do the hard part. And believe me, folks, what Josh and I do, it is not fun. It is not easy getting up at 3:27, although it's probably habit for you. Nobody wants to do that. That isn't fun. In the winter here in New York, that's cold. And it is not an easy thing to do, but he does it because he's a leader, because he's a creator. You want to be successful, folks, follow his model, create what you want. Stop listening to other people tell you you can't, you shouldn't. That's a dumb idea. And now that I put that out, stop listening to other people telling you that what I just taught you is stupid, is not real, is a scam. Do your own research. Be the leader. Go out and figure the path out yourself. And you'll find that it all leads the same place, and that is success.
I think that's the perfect way to end it, man. This was incredible. Incredible.
Love it.
Incredible. Well, listen, guys, Chris, where can they find you?
Yeah, so I'm all over the place. Go to chrisnaugle.com, watch the 90-minute video, book a call. If you want more research, I'm on every social platform. My handle is @TheChrisNaugle. Every day on YouTube, I put a new piece of content. They're so fun and educational. So go to YouTube @TheChrisNaugle and dive in, and you'll start seeing the truth about money.
Incredible. Chris, thank you so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. And this was really an incredible episode. So thank you again. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Legend. Do you know my name? My name is Legend.